welcome. Welcome to the second of the interviews to female composers carried out by Silart on the occasion of its project, Eunoia 2.0 Prostitution of Stories, which will take place next 28th of June in the space offered by Kulturhaus Helferei. Today we have the pleasure of having the Norwegian composer, Maja Ratkje. Hello, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
We would like to ask you first, what line of work do you follow and why?
Yeah, nice. Yes, it's a difficult question. And I was thinking about this because I rather focus on the works. It feels like every work to me is much more important than having like a linear production when it comes to themes or to aesthetics. Sometimes I'm making it a bit hard for myself because I work in different fields of contemporary music. And to me, it all connects, but it's a bit difficult for others sometimes, especially reviewers and bookers and organizers to see how it connects. Mm-hmm. So I don't belong to one style of music or one ism. I'm actually not interested in isms at all. I think those are created by people who need those to create power. And you see all the isms in history, they're all created by men, or at least as I can find. And it's a way to sort others out of it. People who are more open and interested in the works like limitless qualities rather than limiting qualities. So to me, it's a line could be like the opposite. It could be to keep that openness rather than following one line. Yeah. So I don't feel that I need to define any pre-announced aesthetics in my work because I create that within my own work. Mm-hmm. And all the works for me are new explorations of how my art can meet audience in different ways and how I can collaborate with others, how the work can communicate. So I'm much more interested in work, in the works, rather than my biographical intervenence and making that biographical line in history that is, to me, is much is uninteresting compared to the works itself. But today, as you see, that there's so much focus on the person, and that's of course is needed as well, because some historians, they have to make biographical documents, but that's their job, and it's like it's demanded that you make yourself this artist fundament that it is easy to explain your work based upon. But I refuse to do that.
So you could also say that your music is really connected about how you feel in the different moments of your life, or what the people or what inspired you, that the things that surround you influence your music in a way, no?
I feel that the work is open. Not that I write open scores. I do that as well, but I can write like really detailed composed scores, but I feel that the work is in communication with its surroundings and me as a part of that. It's not a one-to-one relationship between me and the work. The work is in relationship to everyone who the work communicates with. And that is all the influences that I have. And that is not only musical influences, but it's also the people who I collaborate with in order for the music to live. The other musicians or co-creators in a team where you create a work like you are doing now. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's that is much more interesting to me to find that meeting point where music can reach so much further than your own personal, self-indulgent wish to express yourself.
Yeah. So at the end, your music will be live in the real moment when it's sounding. Right?
It doesn't exist if it's not communicated. Yeah. The work is deliberate, so it is fundamented on that. So it's far from this artist myth thinking that you sit and create grand works and then they all exist in your head. But it's not that. So I'm not even very obsessed with like writing fantastic graphical scores. Like, so I have a really standardized writing of scores, for example, because it's not there. The art is when it meets the audience. And if the audience don't see that, then it's not important. It's a way to have a relationship to the musicians that is practical and works at its best and is detailed enough so they don't need to ask too many questions.
Yeah. So you like the process of asking questions?
Yeah, within the work, yes. I like to have the work open and vulnerable and contradictious. Yeah. So it's not. I have a lot of political statements, but the work of art is so much more varied, and it maintains those qualities like of diversity and contradicting main focuses.
Yes.
Maybe that's why your music has a lot of improvisation, which improvisation is a really big part in your working sound.
No, it doesn't have to do with that. This is just a philosophical fundamental how I think that music should be.
Okay.
Some of my work is improvised and some of my work is composed, and some of it is sound installation and some of it is for orchestra. But then again, like I don't use improvisation as a tool to achieve openness. Improvisation is a way for me to perform. When I perform, then I improvise. But when I make music for others, then it's not so improvised.
So it's like more when you go into a stage when you have like this tool of improvisation, but it's like a tool that you use as a interpretation. A performer.
Yeah, I'm a performer and a composer. So when I perform, then I improvise, and then it's free improvisation. When I compose, then I compose.
Okay, yes. Now,
but it's a lot of things between as well. But these are like the main outer parts, and it's a lot of work which exists between. But some people think that me being a performer, then I'm doing that when I make other people also perform. But if I use other musicians as improvisation musicians in my work, then I rather see it as a collaboration. Then it's not me as a composer, then it's a co-composed work with someone. And that is also changing now, because the composer role has to be more flexible. You don't sit there and take all the credits for someone who's doing all the work anymore. And the musicians have their own language as well. And being a performer, I know that if I use my voice in other people's work, then it's like that way of using my voice is it's already a tool for composition. So that will mean that I also take part as a composer.
Yep.
You know?
Yes.
So this awareness is much stronger now among musicians as well. What I have, interestingly enough, noted, I don't know if this is a tendency or not, but over the 25 years of being in the avant-garde field as a professional composer and a performer, I see that, especially from the beginning, that it's more women composers and performers who are not so concerned about their egos, and they are more open and more willing to collaborate without taking the credit as a main, figure. That we are not so. It's not that important for us to have our name biggest on the poster. If we go into collaborations, women are much more flexible in that. I think that has to do with something I spoke about already, with the isms created by men, the schools of styles that you represent. And if you don't feel that you belong to that, I don't feel that I belong, and the whole of me doesn't belong anywhere in those already made up isms. So I don't feel responsible for that, and I don't need to defend it. Yes. And I want the focus to be on the work and not on me.
Yeah.
Even though you can't control that from the outside, it looks like me as a person is getting a lot of attention, but I want the focus to be on the work. The work is not getting enough attention, but not at all.
But at the same time, for working in that way, you have to have sound reference, people that did some things before, so you can take for doing your music. So at the same time, you are also taking this system from the past to make your own music. So at the same time, you are in.
Yes, when you get commissions, then you are giving frames. But you can, of course, you can challenge the frames that you are giving.
Yeah.
And more composers now, they like to make works which involves much more than just playing the music on the instruments. I've been doing that a lot from the start. If I got a music commission, I would look at the ideas that I had for it. For example, the work I made for the Norwegian Girls Choir, which is called Ro Uro, Rest and Rest, which was a commission for girls choir, and I made it into a theater piece where they are dancing and doing a lot of action, and it's also some props, and there's a light choreography as well, and all those things came along with the ideas of the work. So I saw that it was needed, and then when you give it to them, it's not what they expect, but you can open some spaces, and they have said to me that opened up for them as well in order to meet contemporary music. So after that work, they have been doing a lot of new work by other composers as well. Just one example, but it's not always that you confront the system when you get it, but and of course, if you get the chance to write for orchestra, that is so rare, and it's so big apparatus. And I have done that also, and not to have that chance, that would be a shame as well, because I feel that my voice is needed in that field also. So to me, to write for orchestra, it feels like I have something to say there in that format. That took some years to realize that it was worth it. I felt much more comfortable in the small scenes and the collaborations. Mm-hmm. But most often when I am invited to do something as a performer, then it's a totally different scene from the classical contemporary scene. Then it's the electronica festivals and noise music festivals and jazz festivals, a lot of jazz festivals. So they don't have anything to do with each other either. So it's not like the system is not even one thing. It's like tons of things. And it's also small idealistic scenes.
So do you feel like there are venues or festivals so you can play your music in there? So you are receiving this open knowledge, open minds from the others when you perform, when you bring your work to the places?
If I collaborate with someone, then I feel like we are meeting as persons rather than representatives from different art fields and backgrounds and cultures or gender. Then we are meeting as creative people who can collaborate together with different views on things. And as I said, in the process where you explore ideas, and it's not only musical ideas that come through, it's also ideas about the visuals and texts and a whole other things. And and I want to create an atmosphere when I collaborate with people where that can happen, where everyone feels welcome to contribute in all the levels. It can get more chaotic, but it's often much more interesting also.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Related with the idea of this system of man's composers with a really big ego and a kind of a name, you think that, for example, you mentioned that for you is a kind of a tool that makes you more free because you don't need to be part of this because you are not. Because of being a woman, you are not even in the mind of this system, no?
Yeah, I don't feel responsible for it. Yes, exactly.
You think that can also be a limit for other people, like for other women? Could be. For you, it's a freedom, but could be also a limit.
Yes, of course, because it makes you invisible in meeting with those institutions that have power. And you see that less women are performed, the bigger up in the system you go. Further down on the small stages, there is quite a good representation now. It has got a lot better over the last 20 years. It's still not there, but it's taking time. But if you go up in the system to operas and big orchestras and institutions, then there's fewer and fewer women, the more power and money is involved. So of course it is. It is a limitation. If you are not if you don't feel that you have placed both your feet in one tradition, then it's hard to fight for that space.
Yeah.
And nobody, when you're not encouraged, you have to take that space as well. I do it when I get a chance, when I am invited, then I do it. I feel, yes, I have to write for this orchestra. It's a fantastic opportunity. And I think I can see what my aesthetics do when I meet those frames. And I really do my best in order to create good work when I get those opportunities.
Mm-hmm. And you also feel like I need to do this for because I want it, but also because other people didn't have the chance. I mean, you know that you have this pressure of, I have the chance, but I know that other people will not. Other women will not have this chance. It's like a kind of a thought that comes to your mind to accept this collaboration sometimes.
And sometimes, yes. Of course, because history has been so cruel to creative women in music, that is, it's needed that we create more people who can represent. So we need to do that. So it's my responsibility also to take that chance. So it's much more than just having an opportunity to create work for a big institutions. It's also about so I know that also means that I am expanding their representation of women in arts, and that is important, and someone has to do that also. Yeah. And I don't feel that I take the chance from someone else, because it's so few occasions that I do big scale things. I'm also concerned about getting the existing work played of women composers. That there are so much, and why have we canonized those composers and not those, for example? Yeah, so this is things that you know about now in the process with your work. And I feel there is still a lot to do there as well. So when I get the chance to do that, it can hopefully not only create awareness of the future for women composers, but also to open up the possibility to see that there have been already female composers that have made fantastic work, that can be revisited and recorded again and lifted up to the canon of contemporary music.
Yes.
Have the woman been your reference at some or you feel a reference for the women in the future?
I felt it was very important to discover women composers when I was a student. When I started to study composition, I didn't know about any women composers at all. And I was quite late when I started to discover contemporary music. I got into it after the gymnasium, so I didn't have any musical high school or music gymnasium. I didn't have that. So I started to study music on my own and take private lessons because I heard contemporary music for the first time when I was 19 or 20. I was quite late.
Yeah.
And I discovered that this music is speaking to me, to our time now. This was the music by the Norwegian composer Arne Nordheim, who was the most famous composer, is not living anymore now. And when I heard his music, I felt like this. I wanted to be a composer, and I started to listen to other music. The first female composer I heard about was Sofia Gubaidulina. Also, when I entered the music academy, then I had a meeting with her because she was visiting Oslo. And I didn't realize it until afterwards how important that was to me, because I didn't have any female teachers, or I was the only women at the lower degree studies in composition in Oslo. So I didn't have any of those references, and I didn't realize how I longed for it. When I met her, and I was very starstruck about that. And I talked to her about my improvisations as well as showing her my scores, and she encouraged it a lot. Whereas my teachers then at the academy in Oslo, they were not approving that I was doing improvisation on a large scale, and they thought, no, that is not important. You have to compose, you know. But she was encouraging it a lot, and she said that she had done it a lot as well, and that is a way to get into musical time and you know, to listen to timbres in a very fruitful way when you want to become a composer. You learn so much from that. Mm-hmm. The second woman I met was the Norwegian composer Cecilie Ore, who I respected a lot, also because she made music which to me related to Jannis Xenakis, like very structural, very hard-edged, very, very extremely modern music. And she was a woman, and she was much more an aesthetic idol to me than Gubaidulina was. Now perhaps my music is closer to Gubaidulina's, but Cecilie Ore's music at that time was very liberating. Mm-hmm. She has also changed her style over the later years, but the existence of Cecilie Ore and also meeting her in Oslo, that was also super important. At the third, because you prepared these questions about female references, the third most important meeting with the women composers was the forming of the group Spunk, which I am a part of. We had 25 years anniversary some years ago. We are still playing concerts, so we are really old. We started in 1995. We met at the music academy. The others were also studying there, but in different departments. And we started to improvise together. We wanted to create a new musical language in improvisation, not related to jazz, which we had heard before, or not related to rock or electronic music, and not sounding like contemporary music either. So it was a really groundbreaking study for us to get into that. So we did that in our free time.
Yeah.
And that has been the most essential influence to me musically, to have those other women in Spunk. That is Hilde Sofie Tafjord, Lene Grenager, and Kristin Andersen. And Lene Grenager is an active composer today. She's a cellist and a contemporary composer. But the other ones are performing more. And yeah, that was also rare, you know. So it was a lot of attention on us because we were a female quartet, and I heard people had listened to our records and they didn't believe it was 4 women playing, things like that.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of reactions on that. And so there's a lot of musicians now in this crossover scene, and there's a lot of women as well. But in Oslo at that time, nobody was doing what we did. We felt really groundbreaking. For the first 5 years, it was like, I remember how demanding it was to play in the beginning. When we just played without any outer reference, and we couldn't play for very long because we were completely exhausted. But it was a concentration thing that was very, very hard. Now we can play hours and hours, you know.
And now, do you feel like you are a referent to other people and to other women?
Yes, absolutely. And people say that to me also. I feel very happy about this. I'm very touched by it. It really warms my heart to know that I can be a form model for someone. That is fantastic to know.
Also, speaking to you, it's a reference for us. So you are a reference for us talking to you.
Really?
Yes, because you are sharing your experience, your work, and it's super inspiring for us talking to you.
Well, thank you so much.
And we would like to ask you also, what did you resonance about this our project? So what was especially interest from our project to you?
It is the aspect of being in time, at the same time looking back and ahead. So it is an example of work that is not only creating the now, but with your work you can also show possibilities for the future. and change how we look at the past. And that is so important. So thank you so much for this fantastic idea.
Yeah. I think it was also important for us because we were like exploring about other like artists in general. Then we focus in music because it's our skill. But we were doing a kind of a research about artists, women artists in general, and the story was always told as a connection of like you could say like the narrator of the story of this woman, you could see that was a man. It's like no, not a woman would write this shit about another woman, and it was like why, nobody give the chance to just express like how blind is blind the world, no?
Yeah, blind.
People are to prefer to tell a story that not inspires nobody, that still focus and keep the standard of this role, the gender roles, than expanding these boundaries and let the people be more creative. Like for us, it's like a question that doesn't have any answer still. We are searching.
Yeah, because you still see, since there are so few women that has been in the history of contemporary music, then you still see that it's written about them as the most interesting part of them is that they are women.
Yeah, this
you
is
know, and I get that all the time still, but it's changing. But that you feel that the most outstanding thing about you is that you are a woman. One other like way of writing power is to say that someone is a genius, and you never see that written about women, or super seldom. I started to discover that when I was a student already, and it was heartacheing to see that women are not named geniuses like men are naming each other, like to put each other on the pedestals. Yes. And when you are not mentioned in that way, like okay, you can be good and you are rare and you are different, but you are not a genius. Never. Yes. Okay, so that you cannot not hit that.
Yes.
That glass wall,
Because I think that also, as they have told woman, nobody have say that this was a genius in a woman composer or even Asiatic composer, whatever, something that is not a boy of medium age white man. Like you will never sell to yourself, I am also a genius, because would be like, I am not prepared for it,
And someone else has to say it about you, but that won't happen when you are a woman, or if you say that you are not white, and so that has to change.
Yes, that has to change.
Yeah, and also how the students talk about other composers, how clear it is, like who are the heroes in the canon, but then lack of knowledge is excluding possibilities, because when they haven't heard the works of Lily Boulanger, who is a genius, for example, then they don't know about it and they can't compare it.
Yeah.
And when nobody is making proper recordings of it, then you're fucked, and then you don't have anything to relate to.
No, it's true. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to do it twice times better to demonstrate that you are doing a good work. Like
as a woman, still.
As a woman,
sometimes. It's hard to put the finger on it, really. My mother used to say that. My mother is a scientist in physical chemistry, so totally other world. And she has 2 doctorate degrees, and she got those when she was very, very young. She was the best student in her field when she was examined from the university also. But she said that she needed 2 doctorate degrees in order for her to be taken seriously on the level of her colleague men's.
A super effort.
Super sad.
And when those things, when they are in the academics and in art, is much more open, so it's much harder to point the finger on exactly what it is. But it's the same mechanisms, of course it is. We can't be blind to it. I have even heard that people have criticized me because I take up the things about female representation, and they say, but she's not the one to complain because she gets so much attention because she is a woman. You know, what can you say against that? You know, again, it's hopeless.
Yeah.
I wrote a book about the representation of women in avant-garde. It's in Norwegian. It's just by accident. It's here on my shelf because I spoke about it with someone recently online. This book, Stemmer.
Oh, really?
Experimentell kvinneglam.
Experimental.
I was invited by this publisher to write an essay book for the celebration of women's suffrage in Norway when there was this 100 years celebration. And they asked different women in different fields in the society to write thoughts around it. And I said, oh no, I don't have anything to say. This was in 2012. I said, no, I can't say anything about it. And oh no, I don't want to be a part of that. And they talked me into it, and I agreed. If I could write the last book in the series, it was 12 books, and I would have more time also, so I could think about it, you know. And I ended up with writing the biggest book, the longest book. So I had a lot to say. I started to think about it. So what I try here is to use from my own history, from my student time, and to look at art, how I got into art, just like you're doing in this performance, and relate that to where I was and how I would look ahead and look at the environment around me. And I try to ask questions like, why is it so that the avant-garde has so few women? Because the avant-garde is supposed to be the open space where new things are created and everything is allowed and there's no prejudice. But why are there so few women then in the avant-garde?
Yeah. So have you read before something about you, some articles, it says that you think that is not true?
Yeah, oh, many times.
Really?
Yeah, but especially before the internet.
Okay.
Oh yeah. It's hard to recall. I have probably collected a few things as well, but yeah. But it's mostly due to the misunderstanding that being a vocalist, that I'm not credited for more than that. So if I have collaborated with someone, let's say I've collaborated with the male musician in electronics, and we made album together, and both are playing electronics, and I'm also using my voice. So you can also hear my voice in it. And then in the reviews, then I'm only credited for the sound of my voice, like I'm contributing with vocals and he's doing all the electronics, you know, things like that. So that is very, very common, and I've seen that a lot. That can happen. Mostly those kind of misunderstandings that people don't take it for granted that I'm more than that. Or when you also it's interesting those things about the singer's role as well, because I'm using the voice as an instrument, how that also is full of prejudice, how you need the singer's role. That historically then is someone who does that job and is not contributing in any other way. I don't think I've seen any lies about, like, for many years, if people have written about me in media or something. I remember once I wrote an opera in 2004, and I was interviewed about it, and I tried to say something about that. It wasn't representing the traditional opera, that I was rather interested in other things as influences than the canons in opera. And that was taken one step further in a review where someone was commenting that I wasn't interested in opera, and how could I write an opera? And that was like super narrow-minded and respectless. But it wasn't that. It was not what I meant, of course, it wasn't. But, and then that was taken one step further again, like a quote, like a funny quote page in the paper where it says, Maja Ratkje is like the man who has written a novel without having read any books, you know, or something like that, you know. It was just ridiculous. But then I was, it was quite early in my career, so I felt very hurt by it. And I couldn't do anything about it because it just took off and it lived its own life.
Oh my God, it was a pleasure to meet you and to talk to you.
Likewise.
And super inspiring again.
Wow. Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing.
Good luck.
Thank you for saying. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye bye.